You have your fear, which might become reality. And you have Godzilla, which is reality.
I'm sick of Godzilla.
Wake up, everyone!
There are two things you don't know about the Earth. One is me, and the other is Godzilla.
We're safe now. No human being can understand that. The monsters on Monster Island can understand it.
Whether he returns or not, or is never again seen by human eyes, the things he has taught us remain.
Hello, we are back again. YHS on Monster Island. Guys, Jay.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, man?
I'm good. Jay, we got something special coming up next week that I think we should talk about. We are going to be on YHS Toy Anxiety on the Geoffrey Awards. Now, the Geoffrey Awards, it is the third annual. Jeffries 3D is what we're nicknaming it this year. The third annual Geoffrey Toy Awards. Jeffrey, of course, the name of the Toys R Us mascot. It's just, it's an award show for toys, Hasbro, NECA, whatever. Jay, we jump on there and we are presenting the nominees and the winners for Kaiju, Toy Line of the Year, and Collectible of the Year. What'd you think, Jay?
Oh, yes. And I can speak both as somebody that watched the original Jeffries just as a fan. Like, no connection. YHS on Monster Island wasn't even a thing.
No.
And it blew my mind. And then last year, the Toy Anxiety crew, including yourself, kicked it up to 11. And we were part of that one with one award. They brought us back. They let us back on. And we're getting 2 awards this year. And you know what? It's funny. I think the Kaiju, whether it's the Sophobie world or the highly detailed statue world, I think they knew that. And so they had their best years ever to make sure that they can try to win that coveted Jeffrey. So I am pumped for next Tuesday. Valentine's Day will never be the same after Jeffries 3D.
That's right. Now, so Tuesday, if you want to tune in to Geek Dad Life at 9:00, he's going to do a special live pre-show. And he's going to link you, send you right into Toy Anxiety at 9:30 for the Geoffrey Awards. And it's going to be fun. It's awesome. There's musical numbers. There's surprises. There's surprise guests. And then me and Jay are tucked in there with the Toy Line of the Year. And listen, the nominees are amazing. Like you just said, Jay, this year has been insane for Kaiju and for Godzilla. And it's such a hard thing to look at all of these toys and these toy lines and have to come up with a winner.
Yeah. First off, if anybody questioned how big of a deal this is, Geek Dad Life is doing the lead in. I mean, come on now. That is amazing.
Yeah.
But yes, look at the nominees. I mean, Kaiju Toy Line of the Year. You have Passion Tank and Saru Jirushi. Those two, I think, were, not 100% new kids on the block, but I think this was their first year where they really made a huge name for themselves within the community. Mondo, I think, grew what they built last year in the Sophobie world. Marzon's trying to reclaim their crown, keep their crown. The 350 line won it last year. X Plus Favorite Sculptors line. I mean, I think everybody that collects anything Godzilla, they know about Godzilla versus Ebra, and that's not the only thing they released this year. That's what's crazy about that. What a great line FSL is. And then Metacom, the Vinyl Wars line's been going on for a long time, but they've really focused those lotteries on their Anraku and Saku pieces, and those things, I don't know if they've missed on any of them. They've all been must-have. So Toy Line of the Year is going to be really, really competitive. Like, I don't know who the betting favorite would be in this one because they're all so unique and all so good.
Yeah, literally anybody could take this round. I mean, every one of these brands are super on top of it this year, and it's been nothing but like amazing toy after amazing toy. It's been a pain on my wallet and all of our collective wallets, but it's worth it. And yeah, you're going to want to tune in to see who wins
Yeah,
toy line of the
I'm
year.
very interested to see those wonderful, intelligent decision makers that are pulling the trigger on this one as far as who's going to win.
Mhm.
I'm curious in the line of the year if they go with just sheer quantity of good pieces or their kind of percentage of hitting it out of the park, right? Like, are they going to go
Yeah.
quality over quantity, even though quantity has some quality in it? It could go so many different ways. It's going to be fun to talk about those guys on Tuesday.
Yeah, for sure. So tune in. And I mean, same with the collectible of the year. Clearly, a lot of crossover here. But I mean, that Gigan glitter Night Raid sparkle, like that toy is so dear to me. Like there are nights where I can't sleep at night, and I say, you know what? Let's get up out of the bed. Let's go into the toy room. I sit down in front of Night Raid glitter sparkle Gigan, and I speak to him, and he speaks to me. And I mean, that's a beautiful toy. And I mean, the other 5 toys that are on the list are just as good, Jay.
Yeah. I mean, how do you pick between a giant blue glitter King Ghidorah or a statue made in Attack Peter's very unique style that we never thought we would see, a 3D representation of one of our favorite kaiju artists versus, Godzilla throwing Ebera in this giant, 50 centimeter tall, highly detailed X plus piece. Like, I just don't know. Like, it's crazy.
I mean, there are 6 pieces in this category, and all 6 of these pieces at different times of this year have lit the kaiju community on fire. People will not shut up about this Passion Tank Godzilla. Everywhere I look, I see Passion Tank. It's all beautiful. And next Tuesday, is it Tuesday? Yes,
it is.
Tuesday,
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, 9:30. Tune into Toy Anxiety on YouTube and find out who the winner is.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, man. I'm excited. But hey, if you have saved some money after buying all of these pieces, don't forget, you can go over to our Below the Collar page and get some YHS on Monster Island t-shirts too. You can do that. It would be so fun to, maybe not this year's Jeffries, because it might not, I don't know, with shipping and stuff, but next year's Jeffries, make sure you watch it in a really cool, I'm acting like I'm wearing it. I'm actually not wearing one of those. This is not one, but go find one of those great YHS on Monster Island t-shirts, because like I said, those are awesome. And I'll be wearing mine when watching the Jeffries.
Yeah, same. Cool, Jay. So we're gonna get into a little bit. We got a little bit of. I know you said you got a few pieces of news here.
Yeah.
What do we got?
We can do that. Yeah, just a couple of things. I think the news has been a little light. I know a lot of companies are gearing up for Wonderfest.
Well, listen, Jay. They're being respectful of the Jeffries.
Yes.
Everybody's kind of chilling out this week, calming down with their news, so they can make sure the Jeffries coverage happens. But
yeah, well, you know what? Maybe it hurts them because our good buddies over at Mondo, they decided not to because they just dropped the Space Godzilla.
They did.
Yeah, so it just dropped on, was it Thursday?
Yep.
Limited to 400. This is the first release of Space Godzilla. Sold out. I think in about an hour. So much better than those initial drops that were selling out in like 10 seconds. They've limited it to 400, which is a little bit bigger than those runs.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a little bit of a bigger run. But
yeah. So this is kind of the I don't want to say standard because I think it demeans it a little bit, but like the more screen accurate, if you will, colorway.
That's what I would say. More accurate.
Yeah. But so I was wondering, Jake, did you pick this up?
Jay, listen, Space Godzilla, one of my favorites. The design, I think, is a top 2 kaiju design of all time. And no, I didn't buy this. But listen, I only didn't buy this because I've seen this in person. I've seen other colorways that are going to be coming out. I know that there is a Trendmasters variant. I know that there is like a glitter variant. And I want both of those. I think both of those look cooler than this one. There's going to be more than just those as well. Yeah. I don't want to end up getting in a situation where I end up buying 5 Space Godzillas. So I passed on this one because I know there are at least 2 more that I like more coming.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. It was funny. I almost spit my water out because how you built that up. You're like, of course I got it. And like, I didn't. I passed. I picked it up because I was I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of FOMO. I didn't learn my lesson from all the Biolantes I bought and kept one. But Space Godzilla for me is up there as like you. It's my top handful of Mount Rushmore of designs.
Yeah.
And so I got this one. I'm okay having maybe having a shelf of Space Godzilla Mondo, but
I just don't have the room for a whole shelf.
Well, you know, the one bit of negative around this, I saw, and I didn't do a deep dive into all the communities and the Facebook groups and everything, but I know a lot of people were really upset about the shipping. But if it's anywhere near the size of kind of the Biollante, which if you look at a picture, it's probably close to that. I mean, it's not going to be as big as that one, but if it's in that type of box, then the shipping I think was actually probably pretty on point with that. It's not easy to, or it's not cheap to ship those big boxes and stuff. You know,
I think it came to $175 total with the shipping. I think I saw people posting that. So,
yeah, it's like $25.
I think that's about what the Biollante was. Yeah.
Well, I mean, especially if we get a Tom Whalen box art or something like that. Again, I mean,
they're gonna. Okay, so what you're saying? Hold on.
Yeah,
he has got into the Heisei series, but the only one revealed is the Biollante poster. That means pretty soon we're gonna see Whalen's Godzilla versus Space Godzilla print, which is probably gonna be his next one. And then it's going to show up on the box.
Well, yeah, because the last one he released, remember, was '93. Was Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. Remember that last Mondo?
You're right.
Designer Con.
Biollante and then Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, and so because remember, I was hoping it would be Yamato Takeru, but I don't know if that's happening. But so Mondo did this. I think that was one bit of news. The other bit of news, I know sometimes we look at like kind of more aspirational pieces, like we're probably not going to spend $1,500 on things or $2,000, and some people do. This is one that everything that Spiral Studios has done has been beautiful, but this is one I think they might have taken it to the next level. Look at this thing.
It's as if like it's so insane. It's as if they were like, okay, let's get probably the universally most hated version of Godzilla, and let's do our best to make it into the Geoffrey Awards for the next year. This is so impressive.
It's ridiculous.
If this thing shows up and the paint job that's the only thing I'm wondering about. Like I've bought statues before where it showed up and the paint job ended up being nowhere near as good as the model paint job. If they're painting every one of these figures and it looks like this, Jay, I'm going to be honest with you. Like I've been thinking about, should I try to buy this? Like I don't, it's insane.
It is, man. I don't know if you saw this, and I didn't like spend time verifying it, but I saw that remind me, Peter Totopoulos, was he the one that designed it for 98?
I don't know if it's Peter, but Totopoulos is
something like that, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Anyway, he even commented on it.
I think it might be Patrick.
That maybe that's it. Yeah. I should know he was like one of the guests on Face Off back when they did that show. That was a great show. Anyway, he commented on how awesome it was.
I saw that.
That's probably a pretty good sign that it's going to be awesome. But you're right. Was the finished product going to look like, are all of them going to look like this? I hope so. I really am considering this. The pre-order goes up on February 11th. So that's, right around the corner, maybe when this thing drops. Who knows when this episode drops? This is really awesome.
Yeah, $1,099 with a $400 deposit required. I don't know if there's like payment plans or how. I don't know how Spiral Studios works. I feel like it would be such an insane thing to be like, hey, I'm finally going to buy a Spiral Studio figure, and it's this. This is amazing. I love it. This is beautiful. I'm so happy for this toy.
Yeah, man. It's just awesome. And that's all I got. Those are kind of the two things that I wanted to talk about because Mondo, because it just hit, and then that Zilla, I just kept on looking at it, and I don't think I've stared at a $1,100 statue going like, do I do it?
Do I
do it?
Yeah.
So kudos to that team and everybody involved with that. It's awesome.
It's like, do I buy this thing from this thing I hate? Maybe.
Yeah. It's awesome.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I'm happy for anybody who picks that up. Cool. So that's the news. Listen, I'm saying listen a lot tonight.
Craig Goldberg. That's your Craig Goldberg.
It's because for those who don't know, I am on like 3 other podcasts, and this week, getting ready for the Jeffries, I have recorded a podcast every night this week. I have another to do. We are recording the Jeffries tomorrow. Like, there's a bunch of stuff to do. Craig says listen a lot, and it's sinking into me. I don't have any pickups tonight, Jay, but I know you do.
I have a couple, just a couple. And these are really cool. I'll open up with one that is kind of the obvious one because, you know, it's me. It's a new 89. So I got this really cool Marathon like 350. Ice. I know, yeah. It's a translucent with a blue spray, that little metallic blue spray. This guy was produced in really limited quantities. I really love this guy. And he's number 61. Look at this guy. He's beautiful. Or 62. I don't know.
On the way to 89.
I know, right? The other one I got, I'm so excited. This has been one of the happiest that I've been when something's arrived in a long time. Not because it's one of those, it's like I didn't ever ask for this. I didn't expect this would be made. But I love it. And that is, I love Gezra from Space Amoeba, and I love translucent pink, what Marathon does. So I picked up the translucent pink Marathon Gezra. Now, I have the M1 sculpt of Gezra, which is the old Bullmark version that they redid. And I used to have the Marathon, the one that was screen accurate, like into the standard of the Marathon one. And I sold it a long time ago. I say a long time ago, like 2 years ago. And I never bought another Marathon until I saw this one. I'm like, yep, I'm getting this guy. I love this sculpt. I love it. The tentacles. I could just look at these tentacles. But the translucent pink is becoming like, I think translucent pink might be to 2023 what glitter was to 2021. I really do. And this is amazing.
Translucent pink makes anyone look good.
I know, yeah.
I'll buy anything in translucent pink.
And the third thing I got, I just picked up literally as I went to the mailbox because there's no packages or anything today. I went to the mailbox to get the regular mail, and there was a package. So it's a small item, but when I'm
we're doing an unboxing here.
We're doing an unbagging. So from
our
good buddy, I say good buddy, don't know him.
He doesn't know who we are, but
you know what?
We love him.
And we buy lots of his stuff, and that's Martin Nagata at Max Toy Co. And so there's the header. There was about 3 or 4 different figures. He got to release the first officially licensed version in the U.S. of that figure ever. Everything else had been released in Japan or other places. This is the first officially released in the U.S. figure from Ultraman 66, one of my favorite villains who had a big role in Shin Ultraman as the main bad guy, the great alien M.A.C.Y.S, the sage in there. Yeah, it's so... I love this guy. He's one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite villains in the series because he's not necessarily a villain. He's just kind of a dick. You know, yeah. I mean, he's just kind of a little bit of an asshole. Dick. Yes, he's a space dick. Ultraman versus the space dick. But yeah, look at this guy. I mean, he's so cool. I think he works really well in this scale. It almost adds like a cute layer to what is, you know, a very off-putting looking alien, and as intended. But I love this guy, and I was super excited to get this. And you know, shockingly, like I said, one of the first that they released in the series. So yay, Mark Nagata, yay, Max Toy, yay, M.A.C.Y.S. Any other M words we want to yay, you know? But yeah, so M.A.C.Y.S and Gezra. I mean, we need this battle somewhere. I don't know where, but we need it.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, that's some good pickups, man. We're gonna get into Jay. We did something. You came up with this. Since it was a little bit of a light pickup week, light news, and a heavy Jeffries week, we want to do something a little different. And Jay, you went through and you compiled a massive list of all of the unseen, unmade Godzilla films.
Yeah. I mean, at first I was like, you know what? I want to go. For this episode, let's review every episode of Ultra Q. And then I was like, oh, it's Jeffries week. Jake doesn't have time to watch 30 episodes. So we didn't have time to do that. So we want to do something that we could just kind of do on the fly. And so we've talked for a while. And in fact, in a lot of our podcasts, we'll talk, if relevant, we'll talk about these canceled Godzilla projects. Like, you know, I think of like, we talked about Godzilla versus Red Moon when we reviewed Daigoro versus Goliath, or we talked about the original, what could have been the original American Godzilla when we talked about Godzilla 98. and other things. But I was like, we've never really had an episode just dedicated to some of these really out there ideas that made it to like was more than just a crazy idea, had a treatment done, had a script done. And so then like, okay, we'll talk about that. But I think what we decided was that would be a boring podcast because we would just be like, yeah, I want to watch this. Yeah, this is great. Like, we wouldn't hate it. So we had to put some stakes in it, right? So my thought was, this game is called we call it the M.A.C.Y.S, and that's an acronym because Jake is now the head of Toho Studios, and his favorite intern, Jake, he comes up and he finds these lost scripts of these 12 canceled Godzilla projects, and he just throws them on the desk. And he said, I found them all. And you, as the head of the studio, have to say, which one of these will I make into a movie, an anime? I'll farm it out to John Urcaba to make a comic out of it. A YouTube series done in Goji Band style, of course. And the next 5 to 10 minute short film that we'll release on Godzilla Day. And so there you have it. Movie, anime, comic, YouTube short film, the M.A.C.Y.S. I couldn't think of any other. I tried so many other words and synonyms to get a better acronym.
That's okay. I like it.
Happen. So that's kind of the concept is like, we'll go through all of these. We'll chat about them. We'll talk about how just insane. I mean, some of these are insane. Like I don't know how this would ever happen. And then you get to cut 7 of them, and 5 you get to bring to life for all of us to enjoy in some format. So that was the idea. And I who knows, maybe we could do with other topics, or maybe this is the last time you'll ever see the M.A.C.Y.S. We don't know. But we'll see.
It's possible, but maybe we could do it with books. I know there's some Godzilla like novels out there and other comic series or something. We'd have to take comic out, but whatever. But sure. Well, let's jump into it, Jay. What do you got?
We can change it up. We can do it. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. And these are in chronological order. There's not any like priority ranking by me. And believe me, after you do yours, I haven't thought about this, but now that I'm thinking as we go through, maybe I'll try to do my own as well, but probably not.
it's gonna end up being exactly the same as mine.
I know, right? Let's face it. It usually is. So I have to say, it was obviously like, there are so many videos out there that deep dive into
we're not doing
step by step process
we don't have
of all of these. And just also to put in perspective, I thought were the 12 most insane. There are dozens more. These you will not see. Giant monsters converge on Okinawa in here. You will not see Godzilla versus Kamacuras. I mean, these are not on there.
But I want to know more about Godzilla versus the mutant starfish.
Yes, and that
100% honest.
And actually, we can do. I think we even mentioned the mutant starfish on our Hedorah episode because it was one of the first iterations that eventually gets into Godzilla versus Hedorah 2, which we obviously won't talk about that one, but we do. Well, we'll save it for later. Sure. But the other caveat I wanted to make was, this isn't saying these are like the 12 most famous or the 12 most likely that would have happened or whatever, because there were some like Frankenstein versus Godzilla that we actually kind of got.
We basically got
Conquers the World. And we don't, and that's no fun to say it's something that we've already got. Like, let's just change out one monster or one little plot point. So these are like ones that like, there's nothing out there like them. And whether that's a good reason or good thing or bad thing, we'll see later. But just wanted to let everybody know, like, we're not trying to have a comprehensive list here. We're just picking 12 wacky ones and doing it. So let's start off with, I think, Jake, this might be one of the most famous out there, and that is the 1956 Bride of Godzilla. Not a typo, with the question mark, as it was intended to be. So this one right here was, I mean, the crazy part is Godzilla 54, Godzilla Raids Again, and this was going to be right after it. So this isn't some weird
so
like
quick.
Drugged out 70s Yoshimitsu Banu picture. This was one that was actually came to Tomoyuki Tanaka, and it went through a couple treatments. A script exists. Like this script, there actually is the script. This is out there. But quick plot synopsis, because it's freaking asinine and ridiculous, but awesome. It's the doctor kind of love triangle thing with the rival doctor, etc. He is really touting this concept of Hollow Earth. Familiar, anyone? Right? Which would come alive 60 years later or 65 years later. And he builds these two robots, an AI like companion that looks a lot like the girl in the love triangle, and
Mhm.
then this giant robot daughter, who's just known as Robot Daughter. And so you see a giant flea attack a village, kind of like the Mega Nulon in Rodan. And eventually, like, all this stuff happens and they get down to Hollow Earth. What happens next is bonkers because there's a family of mermaids.
Mhm.
There are giant bats and giant sea serpents. There's the Hollow Earth is full of other Godzillas and Anguruses. It also has a giant chameleon kaiju and a giant Archaeopteryx kaiju, which are awesome. The big takeaway is there's all this battling going on. The robot daughter is sent to save everything. She, the army can get rid of the chameleon, and then the robot daughter has to come in to be the Archaeopteryx and kick some ass. But the big thing is Godzilla goes to fight her, and he can't beat her. He shoots the atomic breath, can't beat her. And so it apparently turns them on, and
falls in love.
They go down into Hollow Earth and get it on. But the twist, she's actually a hydrogen bomb that Dr. Sheeta built in there for such an occasion, and blows him up. And that's that. So yeah, so Godzilla would have a robot bride that is explicitly listed as naked in the script. That is actually a hydrogen bomb. As you can see, like Hollow Earth, the giant flea, there's lots of stuff that was carried on. But I mean, we could have got a giant chameleon kaiju, a giant Archaeopteryx, and sea serpents, and all that stuff. Like, lots of stuff. What
this
were your
is weird.
thoughts?
I hope that the robot, right before she explodes, I hope she looks at Godzilla and says, "We belong dead," and then pulls the pin or whatever. This is insane. This is just insane. The sentence, a mermaid family battles a giant octopus. I'm annoyed that I've not seen that in my life. This is just completely crazy. The fact that this was in 1956,
that's the part that's so
soon
crazy. Yeah.
To 54 is just like, all right, cool. Yeah. This is a crazy idea.
I think the thing that really killed this one is probably just like realistically the budget. Like, I mean, there's no way
you can do it. Yeah. They're like, listen, we can make all of this, or we'll just get a gorilla costume.
I know, right?
Getting the rights to King Kong was cheaper than this.
Oh yeah, 100%. So yeah, so I mean, what a crazy one. And here's the thing, Jake, and for our listeners that maybe that haven't like delved deep into like these unmade films a lot, not the most crazy one out there. Probably,
right? Maybe, yeah. We're gonna talk about some weirder ones.
Oh yeah. So the next one is very weird. This one not as meaty from what we know about it, because it definitely is one of the more, I don't want to say controversial, but there's debate on how likely, or how, I don't want to say was fake, but like really was this something that actually had any sort of legs on it whatsoever. But we do know that there are two separate treatments done in 1966-ish era for Batman meets Godzilla. So this is Adam West Batman following up Batman 66. There's one done by Sekizawa, the original writer Godzilla, and then one done by somebody over at Greenway Productions. That script is still, you can go to the University of Wyoming and see that script. Like it exists. It exists. There's a lot of people, conspiracy theorists, that think it might not be real, it's a phony or whatever, but whatever. I'll trust the University of Wyoming.
The dumb, like the thought that there are Godzilla community people who think Batman meets Godzilla is a phony script. Like that's just, that whole paragraph is silly.
I know, it's crazy, but but it really does read like the script as a Batman 66 episode, but just Godzilla kind of thrown in there. Yeah. I mean, it's Commissioner Gordon and Batgirl over there, Barb Gordon in Japan, and Klaus Finster has a weather machine, and it actually turns out that he wants to hold Japan hostage, but it's really that he controls Godzilla, and he wants £20 million or $20 million in gold. And eventually leads to a big epic battle between Batman, Robin, Batgirl against Godzilla. They're managed to knock him out and shoot him off into space, just like Gamera was in 65. And for many reasons, this didn't come to fruition. And but not a ton outside of that. Just this idea of like Adam West battling, Haruo Nakajima in Godzilla suit in 1967 would be pretty hilarious.
This is a pass for me, Jay. This is super weird. This, to me, out of talking about Bride of Godzilla, we just talked about, this is weirder than that. Like this, the fact that there were people that were like, let's make this a reality.
Yeah.
Is insane to me. I don't like this. I don't want to see this. I'm baffled by this entire thing.
So this one is not going to be in the feature film.
No. I'll go ahead and tell you, this doesn't make anything in my list.
I love it, man. The next one I already mentioned that we talked about this one on the Daigoro episode, so a little bit of repeat here. But this is a cool one because it may or may not have really influenced one of our favorite films in Daigoro versus Goliath. But this essentially was intended to be like a Toho Subaraya collaboration, right? They wanted to work together, and the plot was. Monster arrived from the moon. Monster arrives on Earth. They look very different. And the army, of course, says, hey, let's get them together so they'll fight. And we'll have to kill one of them. And it turns out they're male and female, so they get it on. We'll hit a lot of that. There's a lot of kaiju relations in these the plots. Anyway, they have a baby. And so it's Red Moon and Erebus, and Halfin is the baby. And of course, there's going to be a greedy entrepreneur, right? Like, King Kong style. They take the baby, and unfortunately, they can't. They don't know how to handle the baby very well, and he dies. And that pisses off mommy and daddy, and they have to bring in Godzilla to stop them. All this takes place on Okinawa, years before, King Caesar made his Okinawan debut. And of course, the big thing here is a lot of folks say that this kind of fell through with just like nobody could get on the right page. And, a couple years later, you get Daigoro versus Goliath. And there was rumors for a long time that Daigoro's mom and Goliath were the mom and the dad. A suit. It's maybe a bit dubious, but we do know later that Toho does distribute the Subaraya produced Daigoro versus Goliath. So, this had to have some influence, direct or indirectly, on that. I don't know if anybody will ever know the true story, but Godzilla versus Red Moon could have hit the airwaves in 1970 or the movie screens, but we don't have it.
Yeah, this one I feel like seemed like a more likely movie that could have got made. I actually really like this plot, and I like the title Red Moon. I like the names of the creatures. And all the concept art, this little piece of concept art you have here, and then there's some other art for this movie that didn't get made too. Looks really great. The designs of the creatures look really cool and interesting and different compared to other kaiju. I would have liked to see this movie.
Yeah, and one thing we mentioned this in our podcast on Daigoro, and I think would have been really cool, and we get a little bit of it in like Ultraman when you see Jiras and stuff, but to see a Subaraya creation, which would have been Red Moon and Erebus, fighting a Toho creation and Godzilla, it just the different like the suits, and just to see Godzilla against, maybe. I mean, think of it if it was Goliath and Daigoro's mom that were supposed to be Erebus and Red Moon. Like, I'm not saying the quality, but the Tokusatsu kaiju and the Ultra kaiju are made with just a little bit different. It's different than the feature film ones. That would have been really cool to see.
I would have, if this would have happened, I would have preferred them look more like the artwork and not actually be Goliath and Daigoro. But yeah, either way, I think this is a little bit of a more original plot than some of the other things on this 100%. And I think it could have been cool.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. I think this is one, to me, it feels like it could have happened. Like, I really think it could have happened.
The plot of the baby dying, and then they have to get this would have been a time where Godzilla's seen a little more as a good guy. He would have been coming in to save. But it's like, save the world from two monsters who are completely in the right for being mad that they're children. Like, it sounds like a tragic kind of battle that would have taken place.
100%. I mean, the greedy entrepreneur is the real villain. 100%. I think it could have been really done really well. So for cool stuff. So that was Godzilla versus Red Moon. Okay. So this is one that I think we'll see a lot of similarities with what we got, or at least you could probably kind of draw this film to ones that we ended up getting and kind of see where it went. But this is the Godzilla versus the Space Monsters Earth Defense Directive. And so this all came out of, Tomika Tanaka was pissed off after what he saw from Godzilla vs. Hedorah and Bano, and banned him from ever making a Godzilla movie again. And that did lead to kind of a change with Gigan and through Terror of Mechagodzilla the rest of the 70s. But the original idea was this one, which is Godzilla versus the Space Monsters, and they were going to bring in 6 kaiju. 6 in 1972, which would have been awesome. It wouldn't be Bride of Godzilla 400, but it would be 6. So 3 evil space monsters appear. King Ghidorah, Gigan, and the early concept for Megalon. Gigan and Megalon and King Ghidorah, that's a pretty good 6-man tag team right there. Three trios right there. But they're controlled all not by Cetopians, not by Space Hunter Nebula aliens, but by an evil alien brain, Miko. So he controls these 3. He goes and he gets greedy, and he tries to possess this giant statue of this South American god. So kind of like a South American Daimajin type thing. And tries to bring him to life. But the Meijin Tool, I don't know actually ever how to pronounce that one, but the Meijin Tool, he sides with the Earth monsters, and of course, defending Earth are the same guys that we got in Godzilla versus Gigan, which was Godzilla and Anguirus. There was a Godzilla tower element in this one in the story, so that's great. Prep draft exists, but this would have been crazy because you had the evil brain controlling aliens against kind of the Earth defense force of Godzilla Anguirus in this pissed off statue. And you could tell like a lot. They kept Gigan and kept Ghidorah, and you can see that piece. Yeah. And then Megalon is they kept that concept and just changed it a bit for Godzilla versus Megalon, the monster. So a lot of influence on this one, but really cool.
Yeah, this is another one that sounds like we kind of got this. It's Godzilla versus Gigan with 2 extra monsters and a different alien. But it's basically the same kind of.
The brain and the Daimajin character are probably like the 2 big.
Yeah, those are the 2 big. Yeah. This would have been fun to see. Anything with more Gigan and Megalon, for sure, I want to see that. But
I wonder, what happens then if this movie happened and then, you could imagine we don't have Godzilla versus Megalon. What happens? After that?
You wouldn't have got. Yeah, for sure. Maybe it wouldn't have been as. Oh, I don't know. Maybe you might have never gotten Jet Jaguar if this movie would have been made. Yeah.
Or Titanosaurus.
Then fuck this movie, dude.
You never know. But this a wild battle royal style movie would have been crazy. Okay, now here's the most crazy one of all, and I don't. And the thing about this one, it's by far the most crazy, but it's the one we know the most about because a version exists in illustrated short story form that is approved by Toho, done in a Japanese version of Starlog magazine. So this exists in one capacity, but the fact that this was considered as how they were going to close out the Showa era in 1979 after Terror of Mechagodzilla was going to be a space Godzilla. Now, this was supposed, and you might know this person more than I because I'm not a horror person, but this was supposed to be directed by the same guy that did the 70s Japanese horror film House.
Oh my God.
So Nobuhiko Obayashi. So I'm assuming that
that movie's
very surreal,
insane.
like a surrealist.
Yeah, it is. It's very surreal. It makes no sense. It's known for being weird and fucking silly, and it's awesome. I have it somewhere. I was looking. I was I own it somewhere on DVD. It's great, but that would have been. Yeah, this would have been insane.
Well, as you see the plot and you see the short story that eventually gets illustrated in Starlog, you can understand why it makes more sense, right? That there. But there's going to be rock music and stop motion animation in there and stuff. But the plot is at the end of the Showa period. So after all this great stuff Godzilla's done for 2 decades, he washes ashore and is dying of diabetes.
Why diabetes? That's such a weird. You know what?
Wilford Brimley would be happy.
I can buy Godzilla washing up on a thing. That's sad, and I can see that. but specifically of diabetes.
Diabetes.
Get the
Yep.
fuck out of my face.
Yeah. So they go to dissect Godzilla and understand how, how to get diabetes. And they discover that he is a she and she is pregnant. So they obviously, as one does when dissecting, they're analyzing the organs and stuff, and they feel that they understand that they can psychically link to her brain. And they do. And they find out lots of good stuff. They find out that her name is Rosan, and she has a unborn baby that she needs to get back to her planet Godzilla. So they're like, we gotta help her do that. But she's too big to put in a rocket ship or anything. So they turn her into a mechanical rocket and blast her off, and with baby, to planet Godzilla. And that's the normal part of the story.
Right.
So when she gets to planet Godzilla, she has her baby. She reunites with her husband. Her baby's name is Lilin, with her husband Kunin, her male Godzilla. And they right out of the gates have to battle this evil Sunarian race. They're described as erotic female monsters. It's an all-female race. And their battle, and they have some allies though. And these are naked, half horse, half humanoid space sphinxes. And they battle. Unfortunately, during all of this, Rosan is killed. So the mommy dies, but Lilin is grown up, and her and dad are ready to kick some ass along with the sphinxes. And they have to battle the Sunarians' evil giant general leader, Gamoni. Now, Gamoni is described, she's described as shooting flames out of her breasts. Out of her belly, she can shoot throwing knives that are shaped like swastikas. Yes. She can vomit spiders. Yes. She has sharp claws and a whip. Gotta have that whip. Eventually they battle, and Kunin and Lilin and the Sphinxes prevail, and they defeat the Sunarians, and the race of Godzillas that live on the planet can go back and kind of live peacefully on their planet. Now, this exists. You can see most of these people, and you can see in this page here some illustrations of Gamoni and of Godzilla's a rocket in Starlog, but and Godzilla being dissected on the shore. And even it went as far as a puppet was made for this film. And you'll see that right there on the screen as well. Yeah, this is, I don't even know, man. I can't even say anything bad or good about it, because I'm just like, what?
I mean, same, dude. This is insane. I'm so interested by all of this. Everything you just said interests me more than anything I've ever read in my life. And yeah. I want to see if we can get a copy of this Starlog magazine.
Yeah, I think it was over a couple issues.
I want to see
79.
if we can find it and pick them up.
Yeah.
I didn't know about, so I've heard of this, but I've never done a deep dive into it.
Yeah,
and
me neither.
Did not know about 90% of this.
Yeah, I was the same way. I'd seen the puppet image before, and I knew that there was somebody just did a story in a magazine, and it was about Godzilla going back into space and turned into rockets. Like, oh, it's stupid. I didn't know how deep it was.
I have seen that picture of them dissecting the Godzilla before, and I've always wondered what that was. I've seen it pop up in a few things, and I've always been like, why did somebody draw that? Like, what made somebody say, let's draw a picture of a dead guy? I've always wondered what the context of that image was, and now I know, and I don't. I'm gonna have nightmares of it.
One other thing that was a plot point, there is apparently a scene where when Rosan is shooting into space, when she's converted into the rocket and shooting into space, that she is battling. They're described as beaked asteroids. So these asteroids that just have bird beaks on them. So there you go. I want to move past this one, Jay. Not because it's upsetting me, but I'm going to have a little more to say about this one a little later. Okay, cool. Okay. The next film will go just 1 year later, in Resurrection of Godzilla. And this was this one gets talked about a lot, because this is the first time we hear Bagen's name or Bakken. Now it's not the NES Bakken, the Super Godzilla one or the one we see in Goji Band now. This was an original concept, but it's really cool. It's, how do we pivot from the end of the Showa era and how do we start over anew? And the idea was basically to have Godzilla fight, this Chimera type monster, the shapeshifter that has a monkey god beast form. It's this giant evil ape, a dragon beast form, which is dragon, and then a water god beast form, which is like a giant fish monster thing. And then Godzilla's awakened from illegal nuclear waste dumping. You got to have that.
It's got to be message. In
there. Yeah. And eventually he goes and he does battle. He wakes up and he does battle, and then of course they form a totem final form god beast monster Bakken and fight, and Godzilla wins, of course. But then some scientists discover something to defeat him, like I think this was raconium. Yes. But the cool thing at the twist at the end is that he washes up ashore in the U.S. So you have Bakken. A lot of the elements were reused in Return of Godzilla, like from the helicopter. There's a helicopter scene from Godzilla eating nuclear waste, which those iconic scenes. And there was another Shakiris moment, sea louse type thing in there. But the big takeaways here is you get Godzilla to fight a shape-shifting 3-form beast, and not like an evolutionary thing, but like 3 kind of different monsters that can then form into this big kind of totem monster. I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think that is the kicker for this one. Otherwise, it's pretty generic. But the monster itself, the 3 different forms coming together, that's all sounds awesome to me. That,
and I love the concept art.
Yeah, the concept art for this is really cool, and I do like that. Other than that creature, the plot is like meh. It's like okay.
Yeah. I think the fish monster one, the water god beast, was the most intriguing to me. How they would make that work. That would be cool. But this could have been.
I do like the idea of like the after credit scene is Godzilla showing up, and like that could be cool. Like that, setting up the scene is going to be in America. Like that's kind of cool.
Washing up ashore and then finding out that he has diabetes. Okay, so then we get one that we've talked about. This one as well. So this is one I think is great, and we definitely haven't gotten anything like this yet. And that's not just the titular battle between Godzilla and Mechanicon. So this was the one that eventually got us to Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, allegedly, or even Godzilla versus Mothra in 92. Like this idea permeated through both, and initially Toho wanted Kong to come back and have another King Kong versus Godzilla, but flip it and call it Godzilla versus King Kong, which we get a version of that later. And Turner was like, no, it's going to cost you this much. And like, nope, how about we'll just use Mechanicon? And Turner's like, nope, same thing. And they're like, we'll scrap it and then we'll do something else. But during that time, they were able to build up a pretty comprehensive script, and they got pretty far in it. And I think the big takeaway, other than it was Godzilla and Mechanicon, which would have been insane, a modern day Mechanicon. But the kind of A plot would have been them going inside Godzilla in a fantastic voyage, Asimov style battle, of them basically battling him from the inside while Mechanicon does the work from the outside, which is something that we really haven't seen in a Godzilla movie. So I thought that was interesting. And then the influence on this one, it's interesting because there are some plot elements that were reused all the way to Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2 in draft form and never made it. But Koichi Kawakita, the special effects director who was involved in this all the way through those in the Heisei era, he used the mini Mothras as kind of that kind of Asimov style in Rebirth of Mothra 2. And then he used it in one of his other tokusatsu shows he worked on. Bulgario was built off of these concepts of a modern Mechanicon. So we could have got that versus Godzilla would have been pretty cool. But I think the big takeaway here is Godzilla could have gone micro.
Yeah, that would have been, anything that introduces like a completely new element into a Godzilla movie is, I think, a good thing. So that would have been fun. And Mechanicon's cool no matter what. Like I'm interested to see like what his redesign would have been, whatever. Like I think this would have been a fun movie.
Yeah, for sure. The next one is, well, you know what? I think the best way to describe the next one is Berserk, because it's Godzilla versus Berserk. So this one was a 14-page draft done by Gundam designer. So that heavy Gundam influence there, Yutaka Izubuchi. And this was essentially this metallic alien arrives from Earth and starts absorbing and kind of assimilating with all these metal objects and becoming this giant metal mess. And what we find out is this alien builds up enough mass and metal and basically tries to mimic the alpha being on the whole planet, the most powerful animal on the planet, most powerful being on the planet, which of course is Godzilla.
Yeah.
So we get Berserk kind of turning into this Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla type thing, but from a very different origin, very different. And the other nice little nugget they threw in here was Yoshio Tsuchiya's character he plays in Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, the famous scene, he gets, gets blasted at point blank range. His corporation, be run by his grandson or something, would be coming back. So Toho Corp would build the Super X3 2 years before it actually makes its film debut in Godzilla versus Destroya. So that was kind of cool that they had that little kind of tie back in. But Godzilla versus Berserk would have been different.
I think this would have been a really cool way to bring in a different version of Mechagodzilla.
Yeah.
Mechagodzilla is I like Mechagodzilla, but it's like there's only so many ways you can make that character different, and it's kind of the same a lot of the time.
Yep.
This would have been a cool, interesting, weird,
very much so,
potentially terrifying looking version of Godzilla. I think this is cool.
Yeah, you could have made that especially the early iterations.
It looks like
Berserk.
That crazy looking picture where it's like it like looks like Akira to me. You know what I mean? It like looks so it's just insane.
It's very cool. Okay, the next one might be, I think, maybe the most famous of the canceled Godzilla projects that most people know, and that's Godzilla versus Godzilla or Godzilla versus Ghost Godzilla, depending on which iteration of the script. There were a lot of iterations. All of them are good. There's one I think that I probably would have preferred to see, and that's the one I'll highlight here, because this one, there are literally like 5 different variations.
Yeah.
So after Space Godzilla, they wanted to close up the Heisei era for at least 10 years because they wanted to give TriStar a nice runway to run all the sequels that their big box office hit was going to produce, right? So we knew that was going to happen. So they wanted to close it out and they wanted to tie it back to the original, which we obviously get in Godzilla versus Destroya. But I think this one gets a lot more praise or a lot more notice because the artist Shinji Nishikawa is part of that, and I mean he's so prevalent throughout the community. And it would center around kind of the pissed off ghost of the original Godzilla coming back and possessing Godzilla Jr. And basically having a Godzilla versus a Godzilla battle. That does change in the future drafts, but this one we'll focus on is the Godzilla versus Jr. being possessed. And I think ultimately it was simply scrapped because they just didn't think that they wanted to see Godzilla fight another version of Godzilla 3 films in a row. Because you had Mechagodzilla 2, you had Space Godzilla, and then you would have Ghost Godzilla. So they went with Destroya after a few more script revisions and different monsters. But this one was really cool because seeing Godzilla Jr., who is his son, get possessed and kind of evolve too soon in this with this evil spirit, I think could have been really powerful and kind of emotional and really cool. And I think it could have been something that was neat. So that was kind of the big thing there. The other cool thing about this concept was when they said, we don't want to do Godzilla, they didn't scrap the whole idea. They said, okay, we'll be Godzilla versus Godzillas, which was a Godzilla spirit taking over Anguirus. And then they said, it's going to be Godzilla versus Baragiris, which is going to be Baragon and Anguirus hybrid taken over by Godzilla. Then they eventually made it into probably the one that got closest to making, which was Godzilla versus Barubaroi, which was kind of like almost like a Biollante organic organism thing that morphed and all this type of stuff. And then that eventually gets into Godzilla versus Destroya. But we get the introduction of the Anguirus hounds, which is a subspecies of Anguirus, which is awesome to me, like little kind of like almost dog looking things. But yeah, you get there's a lot of cool concept art for this one out there because Nishikawa did so much. And it is a very famous one.
I love this, and I think it could have been really cool to see this happen. Like imagine Godzilla Jr. possessed by this ghost, killing the Godzilla, and then somehow, becoming unpossessed, realizing what it did, and then, having to live out being the only Godzilla. I don't know. That would have been so cool and emotional to me. I don't think it would have been a bad thing to have 3 movies in a row where Godzilla's fighting, because there's something almost like Greek tragedy about that, or like Shakespearean about Godzilla's final 3 tasks are facing
labors
itself, There's something like in that seems,
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know. So that seems like it would have been a really cool theme they could have done. So
a robot version can't beat you, an interstellar version can't beat you, but can you beat yourself? Yeah, I think it would be really cool.
Yeah.
So that's Godzilla versus Ghost Godzilla, or at least one iteration of that. This is one that you actually gave me the history lesson on when we did our Godzilla versus 98.
We did a big talk on this one.
Yeah, so this is the famous, infamous, whatever you want to call, however you want to refer to it. What we almost got is the first big budget American film, and with Terry Rossio and Ted Elliott from Pirates of the Caribbean. And
John DeBont.
And John, was going to direct it. And it was, this is the one we've seen all the Stan Winston Studios, the maquettes that they made of the dinosaurian Godzilla, of the Griffin. But the plot itself, and I read an interview, and I think it was, I don't know if it was Ted Elliott or Rossio. One of them was like, they thought that they could do this for X amount. And was it, at the time, was it Sony or TriStar, whatever, was like, or Columbia, whoever it was doing this one, was like, they needed it to be like $20 million lower.
They tried to pull like right in the middle of it or something. It was ridiculous.
And then the 98 version ended up being more than all of those put together, or something like that. Yeah. So crazy. But I mean, the maquettes and stuff are so cool and so famous looking. But Godzilla's found in Alaska, starts to rampage. We've seen that story before. And then we get this meteor that hits in the US and starts developing these proto-bats. And these proto-bats start kind of being a nuisance, and then kind of absorbing, assimilating with other life forms. And eventually they form into the Griffin. And what you find out is, which I think is so genius, is that the proto-bats, that Godzilla was actually part of an ancient civilization. They used dinosaurian genes to create him as a protector against these proto-bats, which were actually just scouts. Basically, they sent out by this alien race to then form into this giant monsters based on whatever's on that planet, to wipe out the planet so they can ease into their colonization. I thought that was a genius concept. And though obviously not a lot of that was used on future projects, but I mean, had this one been made, we wouldn't have got Zilla. We wouldn't have got that beautiful Spiral Studio 98 Zilla.
But we might have got a better movie.
We would have got a better movie for sure.
I think this is a pretty original, cool plot. And I always, when I was younger, picking up issues of G-Fan, I remember seeing a lot of the concept art from this. I've always really loved the artwork around this and seeing these models and stuff. We wouldn't have, if this would have got made, we wouldn't have gotten the cinematic masterpiece Twister, which is unironically one of my favorite movies of all time. So, that was a good one.
And then we got to go. I think we have like 2 more here. And this was the Godzilla Reborn. So this was one. So put yourself back when you saw, after 98 bombed, I'll never see another Godzilla movie. And then Godzilla 2000 came out in 99. And I know it aired obviously over here in some theaters and stuff, had a little bit of a run.
Yep.
And then they were going to make a low budget $20 million version, kind of sequel, American-made sequel to the Japanese-made Godzilla 2000. It was going to be called Godzilla 2000, or excuse me, Godzilla Reborn. And he would attack Hawaii. The military would knock Godzilla out, and they would discover that his actual target weren't the people that he was squashing in Honolulu, but it was actually the volcano that had this giant lava bat named M.A.C.Y.S that was there. And then they finally revive Godzilla. He beats him. He wins. You're going to have names that were rumored for this were anywhere from like Bruce Campbell to Jamie Lee Curtis, Leonard Nimoy, you name it. Christopher Lee was kind of the people that were thrown out for this. But Sony did kick around this idea, but nothing came of it. It did have a little bit of legs to it, but eventually it didn't. It just didn't happen. And I listened to an interview with Michael Schlesinger from back in the day who wrote it, and he said he was going to try to do a kind of a silly flip on what the Showa era Godzillas were, especially the early ones, where the actors took themselves seriously and it was supposed to be serious, and the monster battles were goofy. He was going to make the monster battles be very real and violent and like whatever, and then it was going to be the human characters were going to be goofy and over the top. So I don't know if that would have worked, maybe, but it would have been very interesting. But that was Godzilla Reborn, and we did not get it, but it couldn't have been worse than Godzilla versus Megaguirus, which came out that year instead.
I mean, Godzilla 2000 ain't an amazing film either.
No.
You know what? If Bruce Campbell would have ended up in this, okay.
And Scott Bakula. And
otherwise, yeah. Otherwise, get it out of my face. Otherwise, I don't care.
And then the last one, also one of the most famous ones, and one that we did talk about in our Hedera episode. This one is just wacky, but Yoshimitsu Banno is wacky. So even after he was banned and banished by Toho from making a movie, it didn't stop him 30 years after Hedera to keep pushing it, right? And so he goes to Toho and he says, hey, let's make an IMAX movie, and to get the rights, I don't need anything from you guys, just give me the rights to use Godzilla. And Toto's like, yeah, we're not giving you any money. I mean, Hedera. And he also only got the rights for a film that had to be less than 1 hour long. And that actually is important. But his concept started out as Godzilla versus Deathla to the max, and then became Godzilla 3D to the max, and then just Godzilla 3D. I want to stay with the Godzilla 3D to the max, the second iteration, because it has some really over-the-top elements. But essentially, giant space locusts invade the Amazon, turn themselves into mushrooms, and start devouring the forest on the floor, probably from florists too.
Yeah.
But the forest. Godzilla's pissed off. He gets up and he goes to battle the mushrooms. Matango versus Godzilla. But then they coalesce into a giant monster, of course. And that is Deathla. And Deathla, there's no concept images of Deathla, but there's descriptions, and there are so many good. I mean, that is a rabbit hole in like deviant art you don't want to go down, because there's so many. But it's called like a red Hedera with a skull face and spikes, and your mind's just turning on what this thing would look like. But the crazy thing to me is that he basically battles Deathla after the Amazon at a theme park in Florida. I wonder which one that could be. But he defeats him in New York in a freak summer blizzard at the 9/11 monument. Now that was taken out for the final Godzilla 3D pitch. But in this one, he basically wins and the 9/11 monument, which is, when this is pitched, it's only a couple years after that. So crazy. And then he defeats Deathla with an ultra spin tail punch, as it's listed in the script. And then also it's discovered that when the moon is full, Godzilla's tail produces a rainbow. So I think the biggest takeaway from this one, other than Banno's still crazy 30 years later, was somehow during this madness, Legendary gets wind of it and it's like, hey, I'm interested in this project. And that leads to, but you know what? We want to do something that's more than 60 minutes. So Banno's like, yeah, you should do that. I'll just let mine expire, and so you can negotiate the rights. And he helps him kind of get in, and that leads to the Monsterverse. So the fact we don't get Deathla gives us these other Monsterverse films, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But until he died, Banno kept pitching this. He thought Gamera 3D would make sense too. But this is another, it's just very Banno. I mean, this makes sense from the guy that gave us Hedera. So this is our last one, number 12, Godzilla 3D to the max.
I didn't put this one on my list at all, but I will say I still wish it would have gotten made. Like that is insane. It just sounds like it would have been a lot of fun. Like to me that, and also I think we should go ahead and get this going through the kaiju community that let's just make it canon.
Yeah.
That Godzilla's tail produces a rainbow at night.
Exactly.
There's no evidence against that. And I say we just go ahead and say that's a real thing. So
I'm trying to think, is there a Godzilla scene where we know exactly that was a full moon out? We'd have to go through some.
I don't think so. I mean, we'd have to go through them all, but I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know.
So I want to go through this in a way that, you go through your head of Toho brain, and we'll go with the ones that probably have the least amount of capital on your part, least amount of brands really making sure that everything is right. And I want to know, Jake,
okay,
which one of these thought dead concepts is going to be put on YouTube, Goji Band style, for the next season of that amazing little puppet, whatever it is.
Well, I went with a weird one, Jay.
We have to.
I went back and forth on the YouTube one because I was like, oh, none of these really sound like they're a kid show, really. But if I could pick any of these to see with those puppets, I think it's Bride of Godzilla. I kind of want to see that. I want to see Bride of Godzilla. I just think having, a naked robot puppet toy, I don't know, it feels silly. Like Bride of Godzilla feels really silly, but it still feels like it could be a fun movie or show. And I just said, we'll stick it in there as a YouTube. I gravitate towards the weird ones, especially in my older age, as I get a little older. And
you've
this
seen
one's
more.
This one's definitely weird, and I think it could be fun.
Yeah, I would agree with you. As you get older and you see more, like I think there's some like cachet and like, oh, that is something I've never thought of before. I think there's I think if we don't keep the name YHS and Monster Island, it might have to be Naked Robot Puppet Podcast. Because that is, that would be hilarious. Could you imagine like a puppet version of the chameleon and the sea serpent and the giant octopus, the mermaid,
all the other
puppets,
little creatures? Yeah, I think it'd be fun.
That is there's a shrewd business maneuver, but that's why you're the head of Toho.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do what I want.
I know, right? So next. I don't care what company you want to partner with to get the rights to. I don't care if you want to create an own Toho Comics division. But this will go out to John Yerkeba, Ryan Dole, and all their comic book reading friends in a comic book, manga, graphic novel, whatever you want to do. Which one of these do you give that medium to?
I gave this to John DeBont's Godzilla in 1996.
I love it.
I have always loved that idea. There's a lot of really cool artwork out there already that you can kind of base it off of. It feels like the kind of story like that movie had such a weird, troubled production, and it was so far. I mean, like Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton were going to be in that, and this is a way you can bring back Bill Paxton and put him in a Godzilla property by drawing him and making it a comic book. You could draw it out and do a series. You could do backstory if you wanted to on the creation of the Godzilla once you reach that far. I just feel like this story, it came so close to happening. Yeah. And it was such a big, like, whenever we did our episode where we talked about it, I can't remember who wrote the article, but there is a giant, super in-depth article that was written about the
Sci-Fi
entire
Japan,
process. Right? That's it. Sci-Fi Japan. And it is such an insane undertaking that almost happened. And it deserves some kind of, it deserves something, and a comic book, I think, would do it justice.
Oh, you could have issues that were, the alien race, how they successfully colonize other planets, and the monster that they create instead of the griffin could have been Anguirus, could have been some other things that they could do some really cool stuff. I like that one. That was the one as we were going through this. I actually also thought of Bride of Godzilla on the YouTube one. I couldn't think of one on the comic. I was just totally stumped.
This was the first one I picked.
Wow,
like, when I saw it and I said comic, for some reason, it just it jumped out at me that it should be this one.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so we have those two down. Now we're getting into just, big money territory here. We got to throw out some money. So we're going to go. It's Godzilla Day. You've had a lot of success with your short films, Godzilla versus Hedorah, Godzilla versus Gigan, and Gigan Rex. So he doesn't have to be suit acting. It can be animated like Godzilla versus Gigan Rex. Which one of these do you get in a short 5 to 10 minute short film? and try to convey elements of the story.
This one, okay. I might have picked out of left field for this one because I feel like it kind of does need to. I feel like your first instinct is that it probably would need to be longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
My first thought for the short was the space monster one with the 6 month, because I was like, that just feels like it could be pretty straightforward. 3 versus 3, let them fight. Yeah. But what I picked was Red Moon.
Oh, interesting.
Because I really like Red Moon. I didn't think I wanted to give it the movie or the anime, but I was like, God, I really want to see Red Moon. Maybe there's a way we could maybe cut some of the plot lines and just make it a little more straightforward and do that as a short.
I like it. No, that's cool. I for this one, I actually went with, I thought, okay, I have 5 to 10 minutes. Let's do what I think would be a really cool, just kaiju on kaiju battle. And the story is kind of like, okay, whatever. And that was Godzilla versus, Boggin from Resurrection of Godzilla.
Yeah.
I thought that would be cool to kind of see like Godzilla versus the fish, Godzilla versus the ape, Godzilla, and then, I won. And oh crap. No, they're all 3 together.
Yeah.
And Godzilla wins.
Yours, I think your pick is probably an easier, your pick makes more sense.
Yeah.
I just really wanted to get Red Moon in there somehow, because there's something about that story that calls to me.
Yeah.
But I think for my other two, or I think the other two are really, really strong. So I didn't want to, I don't know. I just wanted to get it in there.
Yeah. I still can't think of what to do for a comic. I still to this day. Okay. Now, this is where you got to shell out some money. We're going streaming. We're going to get in with Netflix, maybe somebody else. I don't know, but you're doing an anime. And it doesn't have to be like Japanese anime style. It could be a more traditionally American animated. The animation style is totally up to you. It can be black and white animation. I don't care. But an animated series on a big streaming platform. I mean, this is a big one. You got to have some depth. You got to have some grit to it. Which one of these are you saving? Are you salvaging for an anime series?
Jay, this is actually the one that I was most excited about. And
which one?
I think for a anime, something singular point like where you got a whole season. Animes are known to be like, if you've ever seen any like Evangelion or any of that stuff, how crazy it can be. I'm thinking about that kind of art style. I went with a Space Godzilla. I think that story is so awesome. Yeah. It is so fucking weird. And I love the idea of Godzilla having like names and being alien and like it's the kind of stuff that like when you hear like, the reveal is that Godzilla is not from Earth. He's a fucking alien, or she's a she and she's an alien and she's pregnant. That's the kind of thing that I feel like most people would get annoyed at. What do you mean he's an alien?
Yeah.
But that fucking fits you could do that in an anime easily. And I'm even thinking about like the kind of epicness that some of the anime trilogy is. I know you don't like those, but they're very, the ideas are really weird and big, and going to another planet and having a battle on planet Godzilla. That screams anime to me. And it sounds insane. And that's where I want to see it.
I actually would do, it's weird. That makes total sense. I love a Space Godzilla in that format. It makes total sense. I think I would actually go with, and this is going to shock you because you know how much I love this. You probably would have thought I would have picked this one for my movie. I think I would go with Godzilla versus Ghost Godzilla. And I think I would do it as a more like, almost that kind of like very serious, like very emotional, like not as silly or saying like this is going to get deep. And I think you explore Junior Godzilla if he does come and after the spirit is gone. I think there's a lot of cool things. You're like the kind of the story that you brought up. I think you could go in a lot of different directions and eventually introduce other monsters that get taken over and stuff like that. I think that was a concept I think would do really good in some form of animation. But I love a Space Godzilla. There's nothing ever bad about that. Thing, whatever that is.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Okay, buddy. Well, drum roll, the big one.
Number one, I mean, it's the one you just said. It's Ghost Godzilla. I feel like it's the one that I feel like it's the one on here that it was a bad move for them to scrap it. Like, it's such a weird idea, and I think especially if it was done sort of in the Godzilla versus Biollante style, that kind of darkness, you know, and not dark as in the story beats, but it's even like when Godzilla's fighting Biollante, it's nighttime, it's dark, everything feels gloomy. It just seems like a real kind of emotional,
they could do
dark, scary, like a weird, it could just be like a weird mood, a setting, and I just to me it's like one of the weirdest but most original ideas on the list. I think I agree with you that it was a miss, because I think we saw the success of, even though it wasn't like the spirit of Godzilla, the spirits of those that were, you know, killed and stuff, like how it got into Godzilla and possessed him in GMK. Yeah.
Like, you see,
imagine GMK Godzilla fighting Heisei Godzilla. That's kind of what it would be.
Yeah.
Like,
but even like more direct, like the spirit of Godzilla, not the people. Like, this is actually Godzilla.
Yeah, Godzilla.
I just think it could have, if done right, it could have been the best of all time. So I mean, it's hard for me to debate that. I got, as you were talking about almost the other ways that you could look at it, like I said, with how Junior Godzilla kind of lives after he could, like, I was just thinking, I need more than a movie, right? To do that. Yeah. So I would definitely not do for the movie. I definitely would not do Godzilla, the Batman meets Godzilla. But I think for the movie, I would, as much as I want to not pick it because it's so obvious, I think I'd like to go see a Space Godzilla done in film. I'm thinking, like, to me, when I read about it, I'm thinking like, this is like the Jodorowsky's Dune of Godzilla. Like, it's just the most ambitious thing in the entire world. It can never be made. And it's like,
I think either one of those picks. I think either one of those picks are interchangeable for anime and movie. But I would love to see them both in movie. It just seems like a Space Godzilla is so insane that it's easier to animate than to film live action. But if they would, I would love it either way. But I think those two picks, if I could pick two as movies, it would have been those two.
Yeah, me too. I think so too. Maybe for my comic to be something different, I'll go with Godzilla versus Mechanic Kong, and every issue will be them going inside another monster's body and having the same thing over and over and over in every issue.
That works.
But yeah, this was fun, dude. I love it. You'll get another year as head of Toho with these amazing
Thank
picks,
you.
And we'll get some wonderful stuff out there. We won't mess anything up.
Hopefully, I didn't ruin the brand. And I'll be back.
Godzilla dying of diabetes, like, how could that ruin the brand?
Hey, listen, after I make all these, the next call that I'm making is to hire back Bano and let him fucking do what he wants. I'm like, you're over here, here, just sign the right. Anybody you want, you got permission.
Just need a time machine. Maybe we can get his brain in a jar or something like that. I don't know. He probably was cremated. But anyway, I think this was fun. I thank you so much for putting up with my somewhat wacky ideas, but I love it.
It was good. Thanks for putting it together for us, Jay. I think that about does it. You got anything else you want to?
I do have one giant thing, one huge thing.
Okay.
Everybody, go out there. Put it on your calendar, whether that's Outlook or Google or whatever it is. Tuesday, Valentine's Day, you got to tune in to the Toy Anxiety YouTube channel, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, to watch the Jeffrey Awards. We'll be on there. There'll be celebrity guests, all that stuff that Jake was saying. And hey, if you have a few extra minutes beforehand, go check out Geek Dad Live and the lead into it, the red carpet premiere, the red carpet special. Before the Jeffries, it is the greatest award show in the toy industry right now, and it's the most fun 2 hours that you will have watching anything on YouTube. I guarantee it. Check it out.
You're right. Thank you for that, Jay. It's going to be all over the place. There's going to be fun surprises. People are going to pop in. You know, it's not going to be just Kaiju. We're going all over the place. We're talking about Marvel, Star Wars, G.I. Joe, whatever, all modern toys. Yeah, everything is happening. Hey, see who makes it into the Jeffries Hall of Fame this year. So join us next week, Tuesday, and then we'll be back doing this 2 weeks from now. So
they haven't fired us yet, so we're good.
We're doing well. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Bye.